Dear Earthmates, in this episode of the Earth Civilization Dialogues, we are visiting Entela Kasi in Albania. Thanks to PEN, the World Association of Writers, we got to know each other. Entela Kasi has been the president of Albanian PEN. She is an author and translator and academic. And so the floor is yours, dear Entela. Thank you for being.
Dear friend Tariq, thank you very much. It's such a great occasion to see you and to talk to you today. And also many thanks for what kind of project you are offering to the world in our 21st century society, where the earth and the ideals and the humanity, mankind needs more from the depth of thinking of writers, intellectuals, wherever we are, despite of our nation or language or race or ethnicity and so on. Thank you very much for your kind invitation, and please do accept my very best congratulations for every effort we're doing this time.
Thank you. How did your interest in literature begin?
It seems to be a long time ago, and this is one of the most important questions that a writer asks to himself or herself. It seems to me that I was born with those memories of my childhood a long time ago, when I used to stay at the house of my grandmother parents, which was in front of Overit Lake, a very nice view with women, grandmothers. We used to be alone those times because Albania was suffering from what we used to call dictatorship and isolation. Many from uncles and cousins were sent to prison in those camps, labor camps, as political prisoners. And so I used to stay with her, with my grandmother, and also with other women of family. Fortunately, it was only my mother who was not punished and my father, and I was the only child to stay there. During those times, asking question as a child, why we are living in such a big house, but without people, my grandmother used to tell me in a very soft way, in form of tales, or I do not know how to express the everything that was happening around us. She was a great woman, and she mostly takes the main part into my writings as the main character, but also as the main inspiration. It happens to the life of writers to be born and grown up in difficult conditions, but this maybe make us, wherever we are, to have another perception and vision for maybe a better world, and also to look for the freedom and to break those limitations or walls to which we are always get surrounded. Even now, it isn't our fault. So it came to literature the first from my childhood, listening to her. And then I started to write early, very early in my childhood. I do not know what. There are many writings in those books and copybooks, which my mother keeps yet in our big house, in my parents' house. And only after 90s, I could have my first poetry published in journals in Albania. And also I could have my first book in 1992. It was my family, my father, who did it, who made it happen. And I was just surprised I never thought that I could become a writer. I thought that I could be everything, maybe a lawyer or a professor of literature or languages. But so writing became a part of my life, and I still do continue to write. I do not know if writing could not exist, what shape and form I personally could have. So it happened. And now if we turn to the today world, and in different places of the world, it is that from the ancient times, since the literature used to be told by verses of poetry from people to people, it took the place that the word needs to have amongst people as it is today. Of course, that I get stressed, as many others, when I think about the society of the 21st century as we are. Let's say right now I am on my sofa and in a small room where I have my library in front of me. And I sometimes say, no, it's not enough place for all these books. But when I think about many other writers who are not free, who are in prison, who maybe are trying to escape from countries where problems of freedom of expression exist, I say to myself how lucky I am. And at the same time, I say, how is it possible that in the society, in our modern times, there are still these problems with the freedom of speech and the freedom of thought because of all that censorship and also circumstances, wars, wherever we are. And so this makes us, in a way, feel not well. Our writer and friend of Pamuk has an expression, and you know it, if a writer somewhere is not free, no writer is free anywhere else, which means that we can be in the same situation everywhere, but this use of freedom for a person is the highest is the highest status that the person can have. It's also dignity, because without that, how can a human being exist? And to resist, it's also very, very, very difficult. And from times to times, we go back to literature, to art, to thinkers, to philosophy, not only to understand what happened to the entire world through centuries of civilization, but to find a way to protect, to change, to make it a better place to live in for our children, for the next generations, because it's on our hands to do the right things, but it's also on the hands of those who make decisions for the future of the society. Sometimes it's easy to say that there is no war around, it's peace. No, it's not a quiet world. It's a very stressful one, always with this fear of what's going to happen the next day. And to talk about what we are doing, it's not to talk about what a writer should do when it comes, but a writer is also an intellectual, a thinker. And if he or she opposes, if he or she speaks the own word and make the other things about what's going on, maybe we can change the situation if we are heard, if we are listened. And this means to fight strong and to have a strength inside you and also a vision for what the society of the future could be.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Freedom of expression needs to be accompanied by duty of listening, I think, duty to listen. Because only freedom of expression cannot be fruitful if the other side or people do not, they refuse to listen. And so just like making speeches, there are lessons, rhetoric classes, etc. Listening classes maybe should be included in schools. And another thing is that you are a lawyer in practice. You have been defending human rights. You have been arguing. You have been accusing injustice as a lawyer in real life. So you have also become, I think, and you are certainly also an academic. You are a thinker, an activist. What who were some of the authors, poets, and other writers that influenced you, that you liked reading?
Indeed, there are too many. When we enter to the world of literature, it seems to me like a temple, and as the best place where you can find yourself and the society itself. And if I could talk by names, I could go in different parts of the world in all languages. But let me get focused on the 20th century because of what we are seeing with our eyes yet again. Hannah Arendt, the philosopher, the journalist, with her books in philosophy and studies, but mostly she impressed me and influenced sometimes with her book, which is called The Origins of Totalitarianism, because for the very first time, she went to the roots of the problem, and she accepts and tells to the world without compromise that both Stalinism and Nazism have committed crime through terrorism by executing people, not only taking their life, but also by putting too much terrorism in their everyday thinking and existing. And these were used as mechanism to kill the freedom of the individual, and also to let the human being without dignity. And despite of right wing or left wing of these groups or parties or philosophies, when they commit crimes against humanity, they are criminal systems and systems of ruling or of polity. This is the one. And when I read her, I used to read a long time ago into English language, I found the same idea for my novel, The Harvest of Christmas, which is the isolation of people in Albania during dictatorship and the passing to the transition, which was towards what we call the open society or democracy. But what was the risk of Stalinism and dictatorship, and what was the risk not of freedom of expression, but of the controlled freedom from those who tried, let's say, to make the society a better place to live in. And so I found it that my family was in between these limitations and these processes. Also, I do not know why, but if I go back to the novels of Dostoyevsky, the writer from Russia, Dostoyevsky, the Russian one, I do not know why I do like him too much. Maybe because of his thoughts, because he shaped the entire falling of the values of Russia of the 18th century and 19th in a Russia which was later become what we used to see during Bolshevism when the world was divided through two, east or west, and when freedom was not anymore a basis or a pillar of the Eastern society. There was the beginning. Also, I was impressed from Franz Kafka when he wrote The Process, the very famous novel, The Process, which was of the 19th and early 20th century. And it was published in maybe in 1925, something like that. And in Albania, we could read him only after 90s in the 20th century. And this process that Franz Kafka writes with Joseph K., the main character, who was arrested one day in the morning for a crime that he has never committed, and he was executed as a dog without any process, without being in front of justice system. And all the crowd liked him once when he used to say that he was not guilty, but he was let aside. It is that in the 20th century, we have this execution of freedom and also of the dignity of humankind. If Joseph K. was the first, the others would be later following him. But the others were real people in different parts of the world. And also I was impressed from George Orwell, The Animal Farm. It's really one of the books that makes you think twice, three times to understand the society of the 20th century after the Second World War. And also it is the famous one, 1984. This 1984 seems to me as it is for the undertaken control of the entire society, where the individual freedom and the thinking, the free thinking, and the freedom of not only of human beings' writings and expression, but of everything which is controlled, make you think that there is not only a limitation, but there is a real wall where you as an individual may be inside the controlled and you can't. So it seems to be not optimistic, books, very pessimistic, but very real. And these writers, I see these writers as the greatest thinkers of the 20th century. And from those kind of writers that do not make any compromise with any system, and they ignore all systems, and they dare to tell to the society the truths that we are watching, seeing, living in our today, in our everyday life in the 21st century, unfortunately.
That's right. You have mentioned some key authors and works. It's interesting that you mentioned Hannah Arendt. Teresa Kadet, our friend, also mentioned her. And excuse me, about 14 years ago, when I was in Tel Aviv, invited for a theater showcase, I watched The Banality of Love, a play on Hannah Arendt and Heidegger, written by Savion Libret, whose parents were Holocaust survivors. And I translated it into Turkish, and it was performed in 2012 at Istanbul State Theatre. And Dostoyevsky also influenced me tremendously. And it's interesting that Tolstoy and Dostoyevsky never came together, although for a week they were on the same street. They knew each other's existence in different buildings on the same street. They didn't come together. That's very interesting. And when we mention terrorism, of course, terror is an interesting concept, and unfortunately, it is made a part of our lives early childhood. In some societies, usually father is a figure of terror, or the police is made a figure of terror. You know, if you do this, that policeman will take you away, or if your father will beat you up, etc. This is terror, and also the notion of God has been used as a means of terror. Some people say that if somebody is not afraid of God, then you should be afraid of that person, which I do not agree at all. And then, as opposed to that, there is the belief of God worthy of love and who loves, etc. That's another thing. So what I mean is that anything can be a tool serving terrorism, serving manipulation. And in fact, even love can be a part of a tool of terror. Love can be made a tool of terror. So, and what is also interesting is that we, with all our best intentions, can act like terrorists in our daily life, in our relationship with our beloved ones, with our children, grandchildren, or
it's about balances. If in every kind of relation between human beings and the nature, about human beings with each other, about citizens and the state, about states and states, if the balances are distracted, of course that will produce what we call, in a way, a threatening for all kind of relations, and both parts that take part in a relation will maybe, let's say, get wounded, or let's say killed, or what is not the right measure. Of course that it makes the other to feel what might be striking to him or to her, and what might be not the real, let's say, the real value of what or she is. It's like to look the others with the perception of the one you have in front of you. And Immanuel Kant talks about that, understanding the other from your eyes, this kind of perception. And this kind of balance is to have the right image for, and to build this kind of bridges, which might be, let's say, very delicate, but very important not to get broken, not to get broken. When it comes about religion, of course that if people do go to see it in a blind way, they will become very easily fundamentalists. And this may be used from different organizations, where again, these people who have been turned to fundamentalism are used from those who play badly with their blindness, or with them, let's say a word, ignorance, which means without knowing of what they are doing. And for that, the system of education in many countries should be very aware how fragile it is for the young generations to have the right perception of everything and the right knowledge for everything. And if people do go further and deeper to the values and pillars and basis for what a human being is on earth, the better our planet, our shelter, the only house we have will be for us. And if people go deeper to build connections through languages, through each other, the better the society will be. But this is not only for those who go to university and study, and also for those who go to the primary education. This is for the entire society, because these are the basis: the family, the one, the society, the next, the system itself, the system of education, culture, and also the state of justice. And also the media has a very important role. In the today, I see many programs in television where you may find everything, but you can't find there a very serious debate or discussion to bear in the awareness of the society the importance of nature, of human beings, of life, of love, of values, of peace. And as long as people will be fighting for sources of energy, the most we will be limited in our freedoms and in our ways of life. We are going to lose, let's say, balances, or will not find peace. Once we were together in a conference, I remember it was maybe in Slovenia, and it was a question like that: what should we discover to protect and to develop the way where we are going for a better purpose, a window of hope, or to build, let's say, a bridge where people should. And this was the conference in Haifa in Israel, where all writers from, I remember, from different parts of the world were to be there to build this peace concept. And if intellectuals do not accept to, let's say, to sit at the same table, despite of their language, ethnic group, religion, political differences, if they do not accept, how will the people, the society accept to be united on these values for what we are fighting for, or for these that are the bestest of our existences? This is the question. And as long as this question is not answered, so it's yet a problem which needs time and a deeper thinking.
Yes, and children's literature is very important, really. And by the way, there is a movement in Turkey, this re-Ottomanization. Some people want to go back to 500 years ago, where there was this obese empire. They call it a great empire. I prefer to say obese empire. All empires are obese by definition for me. And they are aggressive, unfortunately. I mean, and there is a real threat. That mentality is what is the what do people think about the Ottoman past? What is the
that's a good question. As a form, it belongs to the past. And as long as we go back to the past, in those memories of times, which I do remember that from what I've read, and what we have experienced, I can call it as a darkness period for the society, because it was not a development towards the freedom. It was a kind of occupation and oppression. And if you go back and you take not the good things, but the bad things of this period of time in the history of Europe, of course that today Europe, it's not going to have something much better than before, but maybe something worse than before. And this must be understood from the European society in East and in the West. But sometimes it seems to me as the European society of today has not yet learned from the European society of the past. And for this, it's, listen, if we're talking about politics, it is that Albania should join the European Union, also the North Macedonia, also the other countries, also Turkey. But the countries, if you see, are not yet accepted in the European Union, which means that the Western Europe is not accepting the Eastern Europe. And if there is not European Union open for the society like ours in Balkans, and also for the Albanians, it is that we are not equal with them, and they are not equal to us. Equal for the value of passport that we have, the first. The second, we are not equal to them and them to us for the free trade, and also to get employed. So in this form, thinking politically, I'm sorry to say, but I can understand something that we are left behind. Why Turkey should not be a part of European Union? Turkey is Europe, as it is Albania and North Macedonia, as it is Bosnia and Montenegro. So maybe there are some decisions which are not on our hands, but decision makers, the politicians and the leaders, should now think as statesmen. And why they do not act like that? That's the real question.
Yes, and there are interesting, useful initiatives such as the Earth Federation and then Great Transition Initiative, and like our humble Earth Civilization project. I invited some friends. I'm inviting more and more friends since 2013. There is a new civilization in progress, actually, an Earth civilization. We are more and more conscious of our common ground, which is our planet. And thanks to technology and more and more interactions, positive interactions are taking place. And dialogue is easier said than done. And I think dialogue is the essence of language, is the birthplace of language, actually. The main unit of language is dialogue. And that's why I think this Earth civilization dialogues from a variety of fields can be a little bit more helpful. We can learn from each other more. A better network can improve. And we have a technical limitation on the not a period, full stop, but a comma, let's, for the moment,
Yes.
to our conversation. What would you like to say to the youngsters of our planet today?
I'd like to say shortly that if you love life and yourself and your future, do love what we have, respect it, and share dignity and peace. That's all. It's very simple, very, very simple.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And I enjoy saying we're together at the end of a conversation or when we're departing. So, dear Entela Kasi, we're together. Thank you so much. We're together.
Thank you, dear friend. Thank you, dear Tariq. With the deepest gratitude to you for everything you are doing for the society of the 21st century. Thank you.
We're together. Dear Earthmates, we have visited Albania this time. We are grateful to Entela Kasi for her inspiring life and dynamism. Thank you. We're together.